as a business leader, I think very often people overlook the importance of being able to join the dots. And if you can do that, if you can see trends, whether you're just starting out and starting a new business or in a business that needs to change and needs to innovate, if you can join those dots and be really active to look for them, they could be really minor. That's what's going to make you successful. A lot of that's actually culture and as well. And the pandemic actually, even in our business, even though we try to mitigate that, I definitely had a sense when people weren't in the office, they became that sort of more siloed mentality. And so one of the most important things for me is what I call one team. We are one team. Clients see us as one team. And so it's about making sure that we've got each other's back across the whole organisation. If something's not working, it's not about blaming another department. How can we work together? Culture is not something that just happens. In fact, it's easy to go south quickly. So it's about hiring the right people and celebrating the things the behaviours and the things that are important. And you probably get a sense, I love working with people who are ambitious to get on and learn. And if I can bring more entrepreneurs into the world as well, I think that our economy could definitely do well out of that. And I'll be doing what I can to lobby the government to support entrepreneurs with helping them establish their businesses and getting more people into work and following their purpose.
Welcome to the County Business Talks podcast, powered by Picture Book Films. Here, we're going to be talking to entrepreneurs and business owners from across Sussex, delving into the mindsets of what makes them really tick. Okay, welcome to another episode of the County Business Talks podcast. My guest on the podcast this week was recently part of our Sussex Business Times International Women's Day special cover feature. She was shortlisted Women of the Year category in the Women in IT National Awards in 2021. I'm delighted to welcome the CEO of Cloud9 Insight, Carlene Jackson. Carlene, how are you?
Oh, excited to be here. And this studio is just, isn't this amazing?
It's awesome, isn't it? It's awesome. It's my happy place. I can't lie. I love it here. So, yeah, very cool. But listen, great to have you on. It was great to have you, obviously, as part of the SBT feature. And I know we chatted on that day, and I was so keen to get you on and have a chat. So, look, we're going to delve straight in, as we always do. Just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your business journey, where it all started.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud9 Insight, and so we're a Microsoft cloud business, and what we do is we work with SMEs across many different sectors to help them when they want to digitally transform. And I guess especially during the pandemic, that's been a really important strategy for many organisations to become more efficient if people are home working, to be able to enable that. So yeah, it's a really exciting place with new developments all the time, and innovation is really important as part of those businesses. Yeah,
sure. So so you started the business back, 2010?
2010.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
So I'd worked at Sage before starting the business, and they were going through their own cloud transformation.
Sure.
And I'm actually a mad skier. I'm a qualified ski instructor, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to live somewhere that you could ski at weekends without jumping on a plane? And wouldn't it be great for my kids were then 6 and 9? Wouldn't it be great if they spoke of another language? I didn't actually mind what language it was, because in my career I've met so many people who are foreign sort of national language speakers, but their English is just probably better than ours. And I thought, wow, how did they do that? And I think that in their industry that they've needed to speak English. So I thought, do you know what? I'd love for my kids to speak another language. So we went out to a few places, including France, and I moved over there and just set up the business, and then packed up my house and moved out to France, to the Alps, actually, in Annecy. And coincidentally, actually, there was another family from my kids' school who moved to exactly the same spot at the same time. So the secret's out. Annecy's a great place to head out. But that's when I started the business. And I had on my LinkedIn at the time, I was living the cloud dream. I had a Vonage phone system, so people dialed a Brighton number and they didn't know where I was in the world. I could have been on a beach in Barbados or anywhere. And so I used to sort of look at the BBC weather in the morning, just because you know what British people do talk about the weather so much, and I realised that when I was yeah. So I'd always that was the first thing I did in the morning. I was like, what's the weather like in Brighton? Because I know I'm going to be asked. It's a small chit chat. And so I lived out there, and occasionally I let clients in on the secret that I was living the cloud dream, living in the mountainsides. And then after 4 years, I came back as the business was starting to grow. And when you're hiring people and growing, you really need to be there. Sure. And maybe that was a practice for the pandemic, actually. Yeah. But it's been great being back and getting the team, growing the team. And we've been investing in a lot of new talent as well, not just experienced talent. And that's been hugely rewarding. And it gives me a lot of the energy that I have working with them, because they just got so much passion and zest for life as well.
Yeah, amazing. So what? So you started to. Had you known from sort of a young age that you wanted to run your own business? Was that something in your mindset that you go, I'm going to do that one day, or how did it come about?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say that in my early childhood I knew what I wanted to do, actually. And I think that it's amazing. I think that role models in your life do play a huge part. And that's why I also think having mentors is great too, people that can believe in you. But as a kid, I'm actually a summer child, which isn't so good at school. If you're nearly a year younger than your peers. But I'm also dyslexic, although I didn't actually really know that at school. And so I always thought, I wish I found doing my times tables and my spellings as easy as everyone else. So but what I really threw myself into was music and sports. And so I just like having fun and trying new things. And I think maybe doing sports also gives you a competitive edge, perhaps. That's good for business.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't until later on in life, but for a lot of you could say in my 20s and early 30s, I thought that to be an entrepreneur, you had to invent something. You had to invent a product. So I was always searching, what's that invention? And, one of the best days of my life was when my brother said, you don't have to invent anything to start your own business. You just have to do something that somebody's doing already, but do it better. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's a really good idea. And so that's what got me on the path to start my own business. And I've always been, since I was in my early 20s, I've been in the tech space. I worked at IBM, working with CRM, sort of sales and marketing technology. Sure. And that's what I know well. And so it was quite easy, actually.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Because I love asking that question, because there's some people that they sort of, they've had that story from a young age. They selling sweets at a school playground or something like that. So I had that entrepreneur. And I always relate it. I always look back at and entrepreneurship is really encouraged now, isn't it? You go into schools and they do programs, and there's lots of things set up for that to really encourage entrepreneurship. And it wasn't. But when I go back 25 years, when I was leaving school, I didn't become a footballer, so I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. So I was like, but this wasn't encouraged. And I think had it been, I wonder whether I'd started my path in business maybe slightly earlier. So it's always interesting to find out where people do on that. So you've I want to talk about going into working. You say about working in the tech space as a woman. Talk to me about has there been some challenges in that? Because I know in the article you talk about sort of gender equality and stuff like that. So I'm keen to what sort of challenges over the years starting your own business within that tech space have you found within that?
Yeah, I guess I actually have a 19-year-old daughter, and I think that's made me become more, maybe you could say, protective and aware of the sort of the things that are happening in our industry and how they might be stopping the gender diversity that we need. And I know I tried really hard, because we're short of talent in tech, to convince my clever daughter, I said, hey, come and work in tech. She cares passionately about sustainability and climate change and things like that. And I said, if you use your passion for those things and understood technology, you could really make a difference. But no, she wasn't having any of it. She's not going into tech. And I was starting to ask myself, well, maybe there's no wonder there's no gender diversity in our industry. What's happening? And I think that probably starts in terms of the role models. If there's not enough senior people in those roles, maybe there's no one to look up to. But maybe it starts at school, where tech is considered a gender sort of bias subject. And I think there are many reasons why in the UK, because it's definitely not the case. And say if you look in Poland, there's a much, much better gender diversity in people studying IT at university. So from a sort of recruitment perspective, it's hugely frustrating, because I think that having more female leaders in the workplace, whatever the industry, I think is a great thing, because what's often seen is that those guys who are in touch with their feminine side, or whether it's female leaders, there's likely to be a lot more empathy and focus on people and culture. And I think that often what I see and hear is it's really not a good idea to generalize, but often the focus might be more on shareholder value or profits or buying or selling companies, and definitely more a testosterone-driven environment. So I think it's great to have a balance and to encourage more females into the workplace, make it easier for them to continue working if they do stop to have a family, make it easier for them to get back into the career and follow their ambition, because females, in my view, make fantastic leaders.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. It was great, obviously, doing the SBT feature and having so many inspirational women and hearing their different stories and different takes. And I've interviewed a couple of people since as well, and I think it's a couple of people have mentioned about the role models and the lack of role models at senior level. And I think I've read about in your article you're saying about Cloud9 is like 41% of in yours, which is compared to, you know, nationally or elsewhere is like fifth or something like that, isn't it? Of that, which is crazy.
And you know what's really nice is people do ask me sometimes, like, how did you do that? And I don't think I've done anything different except keep an open mind. But maybe because I'm a female leader, I found it easier to attract the talent. But I do think you need to sort of be really creative when you're going through your hiring process to make sure that you're what is your approach? What do your adverts look like? Sort of what is your workplace like? Because maybe if you're too sort of strict about, I don't know, you have to have this experience or whatever. Apparently, I've heard that females are less inclined to apply for a job where it says you need this and you need this, whereas a guy might go, oh, how difficult can it be? I might just apply anyway. You never know. And I think that's a great attitude, and I think that women need to step outside their comfort zone and realise their male counterparts are the ones asking for the pay rise. Their male counterparts are the ones applying for jobs that they're in no way qualified for. And I'm sure they are succeeding in everything they're doing. And I think it's just a mindset sometimes that I encourage any female to sort of to just go out there and do what you want.
I agree. I like it's going to be interesting because I want to delve into culture a little bit in a while. But just as we're talking a little bit about challenges, I want to, as running businesses, you know, that's a challenge in itself. You know, there's lots of ups and downs that, you know, pandemic come in and, you know, hurt a lot of business. I'm assuming obviously it was probably potentially the opposite with you guys during the pandemic, with obviously with tech, I guess, moving, you know, probably 5 years ahead, 10 years, you know, brought everything forward, because it's interesting to hear your first saying, like, you know, I wanted to start this cloud thing, which has been going on for a long time, but you was forward thinking, and so many people had, you know, businesses, you know, archaic way of looking at things, knowing that actually we can work in a much different way. And I think that's interesting. So I just wanted to talk to me, though, over the last sort of 12 years, talk to me about some of challenges, maybe some failures along the way, and what that sort of looks like running a business, and how you sort of, what's your relationship like with failure? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Actually, before I do, I also want to pick up on a really important point that you made, which was, as a business leader, I think very often people overlook the importance of being able to join the dots. And if you can do that, if you can see trends, whether you're just starting out and starting a new business or in a business that needs to change and needs to innovate, if you can join those dots and be really active to look for them, they could be really minor. That's what's going to make you successful. Because be connected with your team, with your customers, with the marketplace, and you'll be able to spot trends. You'll be ahead of the curve, and that's that first mover advantage can really help. And sometimes the cheese can be moved without you even realizing, and that's really important. And so, as a business, one thing that I've tried really, really hard to do is that in the projects that we do with our clients, it's implementing technology to often to bring together silos of departments like sales and marketing, and they've got their own sort of data and they don't share it with other parts of maybe the service data, and so you end up with these pockets of silos of data and even culture within a business. And so I've literally been in client meetings where they've pointed up sort of upstairs, that department over there, and then they pointed another direction and that department down there, and you really get a sense they're in different floors, in different places, they don't work together, maybe even in different locations. And that sort of sense of silo can really be destructive, I think, for a business. And so a lot of the work that we do is to try to build back those silos, and some of that could be technology, but you know what, a lot of that's actually culture and as well. And the pandemic actually, even in our business, even though we try to mitigate that, I definitely had a sense when people weren't in the office, there became that sort of more siloed mentality. And so one of the most important things for me is what I call one team. We are one team. Clients see us as one team. And so it's about making sure that we've got each other's back across the whole organisation. If something's not working, it's not about blaming another department. How can we work together? And so one of the ways that we've done that is to have a new layer of leadership, which we're calling emerging leaders, and it's taking people from the business who have ambition to work into leadership, move into leadership roles, who are, you could say, operating at a more operational day-to-day role rather than strategic, and to, you could say, force them together. Hey, one of you from each of the departments, you need to work together and come together to solve some of the challenges that the business faces as a business, rather than in silo. And that's been fantastic. I think it's probably been great for them as well, as they get to sort of be more strategically thinking beyond the boundaries of their department and their role.
Of course.
And that's been very important for our business.
That's really, and like I say, we're talking about culture, for me, it's something I find fascinating as a subject. In a previous lifetime, it seems now, but what brought me to Brighton, I used to run a hair salon, and I went in not being a hairdresser and got the culture completely wrong. I went in what I felt a leader should be. My first business, I was like, but I'm quite a happy-go-lucky, I like to think of myself a reasonably nice person, and I went in with this really serious attitude, and I felt like I had to be a boss and not a leader, and I've got the culture. So I always talk about, and it's fascinating to hear about how you're structuring that. And I think something I want to take from what you mentioned about, again, with the gender leadership, with women being gender, is that I think that potentially soft skills, empathy, it becomes more of a people culture. And ultimately, to create a great culture, you've got to have great people and people that believe in what you're all doing and have got a shared vision. And it's interesting to see how you've created that within that organisation through that aspect of it. So, because as we're on that subject, I wanted to. I know you obviously you champion apprenticeships and you're really keen to support. Give people opportunities and create opportunities within the tech space, certainly for younger people. So talk to me a little bit about that, where that passion for and that comes from.
Yeah, where does that come from? That's easy to answer, actually. Yeah. So early in my career, I went to the Farnborough Air Show, actually. I had my boyfriend, who's now my husband, was a training commercial pilot. And I've always had an interest in aviation anyway.
Okay.
In fact, I used to go to Shoreham Airport when I was 16 and watch the planes take off. See, I was destined to work in a male-dominated environment. But, and so I went to the Farnborough Air Show, and there happened to be a sort of a stand there which was a setup of air traffic control. And I thought, wow, I'm an adrenaline junkie. It looks like this studio. Actually, maybe that's why I love the studio. But it's just full of tech and all these lights and switches, and it was really exciting. And I thought, wow, this looks amazing. And then I started to look into it as a potential career, and I went on to get an FISO, which is an assistant air traffic control qualification. And I worked at Kidlington Airport in Oxford in the weekends just to help me with my sort of learning. And I just loved it. And I had already fallen into the tech sector, but I did this as a sort of hobby. And I thought, wow, this would be an amazing career. Everyone I met was really passionate about it. So I basically applied to the CAA. However, I didn't actually get in. And I passed all the IQ tests, but they introduced a new one for telling you left from your right. But because I had planned to go and work in air traffic control, I sort of set off at 18. I was thinking, yeah, this is what I want to do. You don't need a degree to work in air traffic control. And so I basically followed this route. But then they said to me, your left, your right wasn't quite good enough. Can you come back next year? And that's when I had to admit to myself, wow, this is people's lives. If you tell the plane to turn the direction that's sort of the wrong direction, then that's life or death. So it made me really sort of think about what did I want to do with my career. And I loved the sort of the energy that there is in tech. It's a very fast-paced environment. If you want a laid-back job, I definitely don't go into tech. But if you like a place where 5 o'clock comes very quickly, I encourage anyone to work in tech. You always have to be on your feet. There's so much to learn. And what I realized also about tech is that whatever they teach you in uni anyway will probably be out of date quickly. And it's the people skills that are really going to serve you well. And so, and many employers, I went on to work for IBM, many employers hugely invest in talent in the tech sector, because you do need to keep up to date with your qualifications and skills, and so much innovation in tech. And so I realized I didn't need to go to uni. And so, but I also realized that, just because whether you don't have a degree or you do, it doesn't actually distinguish. And I've seen that in my business as well. And often, in fact, apprentices, I believe, actually can make even better hires than graduates, because the graduates can often feel entitled. I've met some business owners recently who would say, typically, many graduates they expect them to leave within 18 months of joining. So if you're making a huge investment for somebody, it's their first job, who isn't quite settled or doesn't know, it's a bit like trying to buy a house. If you just see the first house, you might go, well, I'm sure there's a better house. So it's good to see a few houses, and that's probably the mentality of these graduates. So what I found with a lot of the apprentices I've hired, they've tended to stay with me 3 years or more. So it's a better investment, you could say. And their skills coming into the business are identical, so I think that actually hiring apprentices is a great thing to do. And what employers need to do is to look at what are the careers that you could have in your business, and what's the starting rung in the ladder of that career, and is there an opportunity to take on somebody junior who has that energy and drive. And I think that in the coming years there's going to be more and more kids out there who understand that there is alternatives to going to uni, and often even really bright kids who could have got into any uni they wanted to, realizing, well, do I really want 60 grand of debt? And I've got a 17-year-old, and he is so hungry to set up his own business. I don't know if he'd stick at uni for 3 years then have all the debt. So I'm going to certainly be encouraging him to look at apprenticeships and sort of think about the skills that he wants to learn, and he can get a degree at the end of that, and that will serve him well. But I was very lucky. I went I was sponsored by my employer to go to the Open University and do an MBA with them. And through that journey of working alongside most of the other kids actually didn't have an undergraduate degree either, but we all learnt from each other. And what I also learnt was about their experience in business and in different industries, and that's served me well. in addition to the amazing training that IBM gave me. Usually it was like how not to mess it up and be sued. But that, you know what, when you're running a business, actually, that sort of training is quite good, actually.
That helps.
Yeah, that's important. But also, I think for me, what I've learned is that, just working with these younger people, they're easy to mold as well. And it's immensely rewarding because I've been able to create new leadership roles and responsibilities for more senior experienced people, which is a great retention strategy too, because imagine if you're in that sort of stage of your career where you think, what next? Maybe it's about being a manager. Well, if you've got nobody coming in below you, then you won't have that sort of opportunity. Sure. And you learn a lot about yourself when you're trying to mentor or coach or lead somebody else. It can really help you externalize and make conscious what are the very things that you do that probably make you successful. And I think that's a really healthy process to go through. So if you haven't hired apprentices, then it's an amazing thing.
I think it's brilliant that you encourage, and I'm really keen to just tap into, as you mentioned, about a little bit around sort of education, and because I never went to university, and my wife did. She wanted to be a solicitor, so she had that direction. That's what she wanted to do, and I think I'm similar. Like I've got twins; they're 7 now, so a while off going to university. But I think to myself, unless they actually come to me with, "Look, Dad, I want to be a solicitor, I want to be a professional, I've got to go in and get a degree in that," then there's so many other opportunities, and I think more employers that are encouraging apprentices come on board and learn, and because there's so much more you can learn within the job as opposed to and I'm not obviously bad mouthing the education system because it's incredible. Of course, I love learning, and I obviously promote education, but I do think potentially the education system, the way it runs at the moment, is slightly broken, maybe in the sense that that's not everyone learns in that way. So we need to encourage things slightly, or look at things slightly differently. And I love the fact that you mentioned about your like your son thinking about, I want to run my own business, and which obviously inspired, I guess, by you and seeing you run your own, which must be, because I always say this, I'd love it if they come to me with an idea. I want to maybe do this. I'd be more inclined to promote it, as tough as it can be running a business.
I'm just waiting. He's in his first year of sixth form at the minute, and I'm waiting for the moment he comes home from school going, Mom, I'm being forced to do my personal statement and apply to uni. And I'm like, what are you going to tell the teachers about that?
Sure.
And I think that most parents, often they expect the sort of, our society is set up that you're going to go to school, do well at your GCSEs, do well at your A-levels, go to uni, find a wife or a husband, settle down, get married, and repeat. And I'm probably a bit disruptive in everything I do, and so I'm sure my husband probably wouldn't agree, and I know he won't be listening to this probably, but I would just encourage my kids to think about their happiness and their purpose in life, and you'll find yourself eventually, and if you don't know what you want to do early on, why force yourself to go into education early on? Because so many people do go to university later on in life when they realise what it is they need to and want to do. Go and have fun, go and travel, and go and work in a workplace where the culture is somewhere that you find exciting and interests you. Maybe their mission of what they're trying to do is aligned with what you're doing, and that's so much more important than I think than earning money, because if you can really prove that you're an asset to the business, you will get the promotions. Just take the most junior job there is in a company or in an industry, and I'm sure you'll fly. If you have the passion and power, which will definitely come across, there'll be no chance except to succeed really well, to smash it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's, again, what's interesting there is more about, and I wonder if, I do feel that the narrative's changing slightly, but that it's not so much about financial gain. It's more about purpose. What's my purpose in the world? What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve on that sense? Because it's still, in my opinion, it's still quite a strong narrative out there that success is based on financial gain, and I don't necessarily buy into that as much. I think that we're certainly as business owners, sometimes you go, you're searching for this goal or this thing you're going to attain, but it's financial based, and that's not necessarily where success lies. It's more about what am I doing? Am I doing stuff on a daily basis that maybe makes it different, or I feel fulfilled? And that's got to be more important than
100%. My mum always told me, which as a young child, she said, "Don't worry. The difference between rich and poor people is rich people have more debt." So it's just quite pleasing. But I live by something I've only recently, in recent years, come across by the abundance theory. And if you're not aware of that, it's the opposite of scarcity theory. But abundance theory is really where you don't focus on money. It's about focusing on what you can have, and that just because somebody else has it doesn't mean you can't have it. In fact, they should be an inspiration for you. And I think it's a really healthy thing to more focus on your goals and your vision, and ensure that money isn't a part of that. And it's certainly how I live my life day to day, and focus on the day-to-day things that really matter. And often that's your sort of your health and your happiness. And the money will come, because frankly, no matter how much you make, it's never enough anyway. So your standards or your debts will always adjust. So it's really, I think it's much more important to focus on what is it that's important to you, and go out and achieve that, and surround yourself with people who have a belief in you and a positive energy, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's a sort of a drain on your battery.
Sure.
And so it's I think surrounding
mood hoovers, I call them. Mood
hoovers. Yeah, I've also heard another one was a mood shadow, and it's sometimes you just need to step back and recognise that that's actually happening in your life. But I've been very lucky. I have many people who've believed in me at my time at IBM, and other mentors around me, including my brother. And it's so important to have people around you in the workplace and in your family and social life who are very encouraging of your sometimes what might feel crazy ideas of, like, one day I'd like to settle down and do this, or whatever it is. It's not crazy. Live your dreams.
I absolutely love that, and echo it as well. If there's one thing I try and teach the kids, is exactly that. Just go and believe in yourself and dream big, and because if you believe in yourself, anything's possible, isn't it? Ultimately, that's what I think. I mean, talk to me then. That leads us nicely. Talk to me a little bit about what's over your career. Tell me about maybe your greatest achievement, and talk to me about what does success look like to you.
Success. Well, as a parent, I've actually got 3 kids. I've got an 8-year-old and a 17-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter. A lot of what I've done is, especially in recent years, is about being a role model for them and showing them that they don't ever have to be an employee if they don't want to. They can, in this world, look at all the YouTubers and influencers, and that I think that's definitely been front of mind, and a motivator for me is being a role model for my kids, and I'm just hugely proud of all that they achieve, and their you could say their happiness, and what they do, and their courage to do what they do and try new things. So that's being able to balance being an entrepreneur, business owner, and a mum. And I pretty much run a farm, it feels like, as well. I've got 2 dogs and 2 cats and 7 chickens. So, and my husband's an commercial airline pilot, and he's often away. So trying to balance all of that. People tell me all the time I must be a superwoman, and I stand back and I think, how does that work? But you know what? I think you have to be really honest about your where you have weaknesses and where you need support. And just instead of failing, just be honest with people and say, do you know what, I can't do it all, and learn to delegate or ask for help and bring in the help that you need. And there's a woman in Brighton, Hannah Smith. She's one of the most amazing women I don't know if you know her. She's one of the most amazing women I've ever met. And early on in my business, there was 5 employees, and she came into my business. She said, "Wow, Carlene, she didn't say wow in a good way. It was like, wow, Carlene. And she's like, you're the office manager, you're doing the finance, you're doing the sales, you're doing like literally, you're doing everything.
Yeah.
And she was not impressed. She was like, Carlene, that's not a way to scale your business. And one of the best, and I didn't really look at it like that. I was like, yeah, I'm Superwoman, I can do it all. And probably one of the best things that ever happened was for her to come into my business and for her, and she's a very strategic HR director, or people call it a talent director. And so she basically came in and gave me the roadmap of like, to grow your business, right, you need to hire an office manager, somebody looking after your finance, and just really trying to sort of succinctly distill what is my talent, what's my role. Yeah. And it was, of course, it was obvious, but it wasn't really obvious to me, I guess. But it was just to sort of to allow myself to let go of all the things that I felt were my core strengths. But actually, in order
Did you find that difficult to let go of stuff?
Of course, yeah. I think
because we wear so many hats as entrepreneurs, business owners. You go, right, you do, like you say, you do almost do every role, which is good to think, but like you said, that's not a scalable business, is it? So, you know.
No, I'd also, I adore working with customers and the client-facing side, and sometimes when you sort of move into that helicopter and in growing your business, you might become less sort of more detached, you could say, from your customers or partners, and I adore hearing about their business and working with our partners. So yeah, it is a very difficult thing, and also for many people learning to delegate. I must confess, I found that easier than I thought actually, and I'm glad though. But I think I'm surrounded by a phenomenal team who it's almost like they have this safety net of knowing me and what I'm good at and what I'm not so good at, and we all rally around to create. I would call it a high performance team. So it's about people's strengths and minimizing their imperfections, which we all have. And as a dyslexic person, probably one of my worst traits is I love to spin 1,000 plates, maybe 2,000, and so everyone around me is just going, "Oh my God, Carlene! Like, what did you agree to this for? Like, we're just a bit busy right now." And there's even an expression in my business of being Carlened, which is I'm so highly creative that I just always coming up with ideas of how we could be better at something, and I'm very energized by that in the business. But I think you do need to be grounded by people in your business that can execute on those creative ideas as well. It's not enough to just have the idea. So yeah, just building a great team around you and being your authentic self so that people can bring their strengths to play. Because I think as a senior person, it might be intimidating for some people. They think, well, why should my voice be more important than yours or whatever? And I think luckily in our society in the UK, I think hierarchy is less important and it's your ideas. And certainly the younger generation don't wait to be asked for their ideas. From what I can see, they're like, they're there right with them. And whereas in other cultures, I've worked with some Japanese businesses and I worked with a Danish telco they were my clients. And I think that in different societies, there's different sort of ways of working. And I think we should embrace this and celebrate our society for the fact that maybe your title isn't so important.
Yeah. And again, it leads us back to culture, doesn't it? And creating that culture and allowing, because you want to create a culture where, you know, a junior member of staff can approach the CEO with an idea and that it's encouraged for them to do that. And if that idea, again, touching on, I guess, the element of failure and mistakes and stuff like that, do you still encourage like your kids and even staff members that it's okay then to make mistakes, to look at that as what we learn from those? Is that
probably maybe the first thing is not to call it a mistake.
It's
sure. I believe that everything can be improved, and I think you have to have a good mindset around that though, because you need to be easily coached. Because imagine if you're, I don't know, a young footballer learning to make their way in professional football, and the coach says, I think you need to do it this way or whatever, but the footballer either doesn't listen or just gets defensive. But I couldn't do it because of Laura. Yeah. Well, that doesn't really work. So you have to create an environment where the management style is coaching, and where those who are receiving the feedback say yes and. And years ago, I actually did improvised comedy in Brighton with the Mayday. A lot of the people from the Maydays, which if you ever get a chance to see, I highly recommend. Yeah. And one of the great things about improvised comedy, which we can learn in business, is they have this whole technique which is yes and. And so people are going to come to you with things and say things to you that you don't necessarily agree with, or they're like, where did that come from? And so it's really important to silently or to say in your head yes and to build on whatever it is. And so I encourage everyone to follow what's called a learning organisation culture, which is where the learning isn't just for the individual, but the learning is for the business, and therefore use every opportunity to almost have free consulting to improve what you're doing. So at the end of, for example, projects, we have a sort of a review with not only with the client but also internally. What did we learn from that? How do our processes need to change and improve? And to make sure that people's names or individuals are not brought into it. It's, for me, I always say that it's about the process or maybe the skills. Maybe they didn't have the skills, but it's not people's fault. And if you can create a trusting culture like that, then learning is much easier, because otherwise people hide stuff, and that's a disaster, because you're not going to progress as a business. So you really have to work hard at that. It doesn't happen easily.
Yeah. I love that. Again, what strikes me is the level of, I guess, communication, which is so key, I guess, in everything we do in business, from, like you say, speaking to clients, speaking to staff. But it strikes me as your level of communication with all of them and sharing that, the vision that you've got for the business, and incorporating that helps to build that culture, surely, in that sense.
Yeah. So. One of the things I did recently was we're a business of about 40 odd employees, so still quite small, you could say. And many years ago, somebody said, "Oh, you won't need an HR person until you're about 100 people." And I thought, oh, that's a shame, because two of my favourite subjects is, one is marketing. Yeah. Why I'm excited to be here with you in this room, in this podcast. But one is marketing, and then the other is anything to do with sort of talent or employee engagement and culture. They're my two favourite things. And one of the things I did recently was I promoted a lady in my business who was my EA. She used to work actually at Virgin. I promoted her into the role of engagement, as an employee engagement manager. And that's how important sort of culture is for me. And I knew that she understands what my vision is for the culture of the business. And I think that starts actually from the adverts you put out, even about your business. What does that say about your business? Are you attracting the right people? And then the first step of our recruitment process is having a cultural interview, which is very short, but you know straight away.
If someone does.
If they're going to fit in. Because for me, what I'm looking for is those people who, A, have an ambition to learn and put themselves outside their comfort zone, because that's not everyone's thing. But also importantly, those who are going to sort of, if they've climbed up the ladder, are going to look back and say, who can I help? And look out for other people as well. And that doesn't happen easily in many organisations. And a few of the graduates that we have hired have said that their peers who've gone on to work in other places don't have relationships with people outside their sort of line management, and other people aren't there to help them. And so they've recognised easily that actually having a culture where you can ask anyone for help and they've got the time to do that is so important. And culture is not something that just happens. In fact, it's easy to go south quickly. So it's about hiring the right people and celebrating the behaviours and the things that are important.
Yeah. And I guess, and back to hiring the right people as well, what I think, and just sort of taking out from what you said over the interviews, that it's not necessarily, like you say, based on hiring someone, not based on their qualifications. It's more about that people. You're hiring that person. If they buy into the culture and they fit into that, then that's the right hire, not someone that, and again, circles us back to the education side of things. It's not, and I think I'm hoping that more companies do look at things like that, as opposed to, I worked in London in my early 20s, and there was a company I worked for, I was in the admin team, but the sort of people that they actually hired were only from Oxford or Cambridge. You had to get a degree from Oxford. I was like, but these people would come in, like you say, academically very intelligent, but the lack of common sense potentially within them skills. So again, back to my kids and stuff like that, and people growing up, and it's so important that you're hiring that person based on them, because that skill set, if they're coming into a business and that one of their roles is talking to people, and they are great at building relationships and being able to do that, that's not something you get a GCSE in, is it? Building relationships is not something you get, whereas people don't necessarily, then that's not going to be on your degree. So you got to take it in. It's so important to do that and have an open mind to that, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the professional services industry, it is a people business. The people are your product.
Yeah.
And so, pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Turn on your camera.
Yeah.
It's so important.
And it is. And like you say, people ultimately buy from people, whatever it is. I mean, like I say, from running a hair salon to five-a-side football league to running a business publication, all the different businesses, all surrounded by speaking to people and having those conversations. If you can do that, I encourage even team people I work with, just like you say, just speak to people or have that phone call, have that conversation. It is so important. I think we touched on a little bit about you obviously saying about being a superwoman, spinning lots of plates. I'm similar as well. I spin a lot of plates. What? Talk to me a little bit about work-life balance. Then, how does that? Because it's something I really struggle with. Are you able to switch off? Do you talk to me about? Do you have a work-life balance, or how does that? What does that look like?
That's a mean question. Probably not, actually. I'm a workaholic, self-confessed workaholic. I love my work, and it's very hard. What I do is I try to be present in whatever I'm doing at that moment in time, I think, to really focus. Apparently, multitasking isn't really a real thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to recognise that when you're with your kids, be with your kids. When you're in work, try to be in work.
Yeah.
And I do think that's a really important thing. But the other thing I would say is, there's a great speaker I heard years ago, a senior executive at Microsoft, and she had achieved loads with her career, so I greatly admired her. And she said, there is no such thing as a sort of work-life balance, it's work-life. So you just have to, they transcend into each other. And what she said is, if, for example, you want to pick your kids up from school, just say, hey, I'm not going to be here from 4 till whatever time, but don't worry, after my kids are in bed, I'm going to clock back in and I'm going to do the hours. And it's all about managing expectation, unapologetically living the life that you want to live. And now more and more employers are doing flexi working, and it's something that we're introducing in our business, because there's one employee that we have, and she came to the business a couple of years ago. She was in South Africa, and when I heard, for example, that I thought it was an hour time difference, and I heard it was a 2-hour time difference. So there she was trying to work until, say, 5 o'clock our time, but it was 7 o'clock her time, and she had like 2 very young kids. And that's what I call the witching hour.
Yeah,
and I'm
absolutely.
like, that blew my mind. How did she's just a phenomenal woman. And how did she manage to juggle that sort of whole balance of needing to get her kids to bed, but they need her. It's not just about the parents.
Yeah.
It's about them. And I think in our society, the more we can be present for our kids and not in our phones and just really there for them as role models, I think that's so important. I think more employers should recognise it's not about the parents, in my view. It's about the next generation of kids coming through. We need to be there for them, and the more that you can do to sort of to give the opportunity to them. But the advantage for my for my younger team will be so many of them are gym bunnies, they call them.
Yeah.
And and that's part of their friendship group circle of friends. It's highly motivating for them, probably to be able to look in the mirror and say how fit they are as well. But it's definitely, there's so many research projects would evidence that actually being healthy and fit and doing exercise is very good for releasing endorphins anyway and making you happy. So if you can make it easier for people to get to the gym and to do the things that in their life is work-life balance, whatever that might be, it can only be a good thing. And I'm hoping to set the trend on that. So for us, how it's working is employees will be working from core hours from 10 till 4, and then they can choose when they want to make those other hours up. So it could be, I don't know, very early in the morning if they're early risers. It could be after the kids are in bed if they've got kids, whatever might work for them. And there's definitely a few people in the business you can tell they struggle in the mornings. They rather probably lie under the duvet a little bit longer, but so why not sort of embrace that and support people have a better work-life balance?
That's amazing. It's because, and we all do, like, throughout the day we're more focused. I had someone on recently and she said, like, at 3 o'clock that's when my laser focus. I will get 2 hours in and I'll get so much done in them 2 hours compared to, in early in the morning, like you say. Like, so I've always been a little bit of a night owl, but I've tried to change the way I did stuff and not working so late at night and trying to be around. So and then you go, right, I'll start getting up early and look at what that looks like. And I think it's so important to encourage that within and I think, do you feel that the pandemic has helped bring that forward a bit, the flexible working and work-life balance in that sort of sense a little bit more? Or
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it was a trend anyway, but it's, as with many trends, that they've been accelerated during the pandemic. And I think employees are making us more accountable to make sure that the workplace is more balanced in expectations. And when I did a survey, in fact just in the last 10 days, an employee engagement and benefit survey, I think it's really interesting that people do value their free time. And so one thing that we've done during a lot of the pandemic is initially we had for those people who've been in the business longer, where they didn't need to work Wednesday afternoon, I said just shut your laptop, go out, because it just probably would have felt really full on if you're at home, or especially if there was one of my employees, he had a very young kid, probably about a year and a half, and probably the mums think, oh, that's fantastic, but if you're actually there, but it's almost like a chocolate cake that's there you can't eat, sort of like I just wouldn't mind 10 minutes, can you hold the child? I can just imagine that happening. And it's just a bit cruel that you're there but you're not there, and so I wanted to sort of make it a bit more balanced. But one thing that we did following that success of that initiative was to implement what we call enrichment days. So at the current time, so we're looking to change things around, but at the current time, employees have 6 additional what we call enrichment days over the year, and they're to be used sort of independent of holidays, not attached to holidays, where they're sort of planned in advance. So it can't be, the duvet feels heavy today, but more, I'm going to celebrate this birthday with my friend, or I'm going to go and see this relative, or I'm going to have a long weekend, or I'm going to do something fun that people can look forward to that isn't taking up their holiday. And they are the most valued benefit that we offer at the moment. And so I'm going to sort of set the sort of the benchmark higher now. And so we're in the process, hot off the press, so we're in the process of working with our team to see how we can look to incorporate that sort of 9-day fortnight where people have every second Friday off. And as part of that, have every the other Friday, where it will be a strategy, innovation and learning day. And so that day is where we'll be working in teams in a more sort of agile way from across the business to work on strategic initiatives that will drive the business forward. Because you know what, if you think about, sometimes when you're busy, it's because you're putting out a fire, or you're busy because you don't have quite the skills that you need, if only you'd slow down to learn them, or busy sort of you've almost grown out of your processes, or your systems aren't right, or the very things that slow you down. If you just pause. So if people can get into this efficient way of working, sort of trying to do as much as you can during the 4 days, will work half an hour extra a day, but that means that as a business we lose out on 3 hours every fortnight. And over a year, you could say the employees gain approximately 9 additional days off. But actually, I think that from what the research that I've read, and I've looked into this quite a lot, that hopefully the employees' engagement, motivation, efficiency, their ability, I'll be encouraging them to say no to things, and the fact that they get to work across this team, building the one team that I want as part of my culture, will help them and excite them to learn new things and work with new people in a way that makes their work really fulfilling beyond the day-to-day stuff that they're already doing. And it might even inspire them to go into new things that they hadn't thought of as well.
What listening to this is fascinating to hear that just talking like the culture of the company is incredible, and it seems like your attention to detail, looking into that so much about, like you said, research, and I wonder how many other CEOs actually spend that much time and looking at how they can do that. Probably not as many, and I want so. But ultimately, like you said, to grow a business and scale it and do the things, you've got to surround yourself with great people and get those people on board to share in that vision. But ultimately, again, we talk about the work-life balance thing, to get the best out of them when they're most efficient. And by creating these different spaces for them to do that, it enables them for ultimately the better of the business, which is what we want, isn't it?
Yeah, they say you need to design a business where you're not needed. And on one hand, of course, you always want to be needed. But it's a bit like, I guess, having kids. Sort of one day you hope they'll be able to make the bed themselves and leave home and cook for themselves and all those important things. And it's just the same in a business. It's really important to invest in succession planning and thinking about the talent. I tend to hire 6 months ahead of when I need somebody, because it can take sort of 3 to 6 months for them to be self-sufficient. It'll probably allows me to hire maybe some less experienced talent than maybe ordinarily a business might, but then I can mold that talent as well. But it's immensely rewarding, and it's probably one of the things that gets me out of bed most is just the opportunity to work with people and help them realize their potential. As long as they have ambition and they don't mind being coached, because that's not for everyone. Then that's what gives me the joy.
That's brilliant. I love that. And I just wanted to touch on you say about almost admitting, saying I'm a bit of a workaholic, but actually owning that and going, it's okay to, because I think if you. There's an element of me sometimes that feels guilty about the amount of time you spend at work, or the amount of. But when you do love it and it's your business and you enjoy it, like it's okay to realising that, accept, like you said, living an authentic, true life to yourself, realising that's actually who I am and I'm okay with that. I think that's quite an important message. What I've really taken out of it, which is something I'm trying to work on the most, is that. I know this becomes a little bit like therapy for me, these podcasts, which is great. But I think it's the being present in your wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And that's the so is it when do you find that you have been over the course of the last 12 years running the business, that you've been able to, with the kids growing up, you've been able to have that where you can go, well, I am going to be present in the moment. I am going to be with them.
It doesn't come naturally, I would say. It just, I think I remember like a couple of jobs, 2 jobs before I started the business. I was working 60-hour weeks, and the company was just growing and growing, and I heard that they hired 3 people to replace me when I left, and it was just mental. And I did love my what I was doing. I was sales director, and then I went on to work for Sage, and I was commuting to either Reading from Brighton or commuting up to Newcastle. And then what did it for me was, she would have been 8 or 9, and she called me one day and she was crying, and she said, "Mom, I never see you anymore," because I'd taken this role at Sage, and it broke my heart. And I was just glad in some ways that she was old enough to express how she felt. And maybe many kids don't do that because they don't really know that they're missing something, because before that I had been at home a lot more. And so that's when I realized something definitely needed to change. And amazing. I think that's so important. And you know what, probably one of the biggest criticisms I'd make of myself today even is that I don't spend enough time on me. So I've probably learned to spend more time, and I celebrate and enjoy spending time with my family. But I need to probably sort of be stricter on myself to spend time on me, and we should never feel guilty about that. So I rejoice when I meet people who are the gym bunnies or who do things that really serve them well, because then you can serve other people better. But I think that's something I'm going to be working on more in the coming year, to just make sure that I have that time for me as well.
Self-care is so, and again, I spoke to, do you know Camille Pearson from the Float Spa? I spoke to her, she came on the podcast and we was talking about it, and I was like, and she was saying about it's important to have self-care and look after, because if you're looking after yourself, that's the best. You're going to be the best version of yourself for then when you are around with other people. I think it was her that used the thing with the airline where you always put your own safety thing on first, then you can help others, and that was something that really resonated. So it was, but I still haven't been to, because the thought of lying in a float spa and lying there, and just my brain just doesn't switch off that much. I just feel like, I don't know, but I've got to experience it, I'm sure. But are you? Because you obviously then something you struggle with, but is there elements that you do, like, for example, you go away, are you able to actually switch off from things? Do you feel that you can go, well, I can just...
Yeah, I've got such an amazing team. I am phenomenally blessed.
Yeah, amazing.
Because I trust them that if they really wanted to ring the bell and go, hey, Carlene, they can call me 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's that you need a high degree of trust, but
Sure.
I definitely genuinely feel I can go away without my laptop, and it took a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I genuinely do. I just in many instances, many of them are better at anything that I could do, so I don't feel it's a compromise. But I think back to the point that I made earlier, I think that what my role is to stay connected with the business, to join the dots, to make sure that if someone's moving the cheese, I spot that first, and we don't lose our advantage in what we're doing, and that the team feel that I have their back no matter. I have this expression which is ask for forgiveness, not permission, which is probably strange advice to give your kids or your employees, but I think it's really important to make sure your team are empowered and that they understand the why of what you're doing, not just go and do this, go and do that. That's probably not very helpful, because maybe the situation they find themselves in isn't what you might expect. So it's really important that they understand, why do you do what you do? Why do you make the decisions that you do? And if the team around you can really understand that, then it's almost like your legacy lives on in them. They can really understand that deep culture of the why.
Amazing, brilliant. We're coming to towards the end, so a couple of final questions. Tell me, what does the future hold for Carlene Jackson in Cloud9?
Ooh, very exciting. Well, immediately I'm working on my house project, so I'm a highly creative person, so I get immense joy from anything creative. No doubt once that's finished, I'll be looking for my next creative projects. But in the work environment, I'm very excited to be working with one of our partners, Ingram Micro, who are sponsoring a cohort of students on a mini sales MBA that myself and my team are putting together. I've spent most of my life in sales. I did IBM Sales School, and so combining what I've learned through my life and as a coach in running my business, and also from my MBA, to take all those skills and my love of marketing into this, it's a 6-month course, and to working with cohorts of people who are either new into sales or new into tech, and taking them through that and launching that in September. So that's hugely exciting.
Amazing.
And then later on in the year, we'll be kicking off our project. We're looking at setting up a platform which is about Cloud9 Connect, which is about connecting learners, it could be reskillers or early in career talent, with employers who want to hire these people to give them work experience, and also connecting them with all of the immense and amazing learning material that's out there. But maybe they just don't know about it because they haven't got, I don't know, an uncle or a friend or somebody saying, sure, if you want to work in tech. There's a phenomenal shortage in the Microsoft community alone, with the product alone that I work with Microsoft Dynamics. There's a massive shortage of talent in the thousands, and the earning potential for young talent. We've had quite a few people who have had no degrees who are earning easily sort of 40, 50 and beyond salaries under the age of 25. So like if your kids don't know what to do, get them to call me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll help them with their earning potential. But I think that applies probably throughout tech. And you don't have to work for a tech company to work in tech. It could be so many organizations now are becoming tech businesses too. But it's a really exciting place to be in. And so I want to be a part of creating that new talent. And you probably get a sense. I love working with people who are ambitious to get on and learn. And if I can bring more entrepreneurs into the world as well, I think that our economy could definitely do well out of that. And I'll be doing what I can to lobby the government to support entrepreneurs with helping them establish their businesses and getting more people into work and following their purpose.
Wow. What an amazing... look, you mentioned earlier about role models, and certainly, like I say, listening to you talk and getting to know the amount you're doing for not only your staff but the next generation of people and stuff is really inspiring. You are one of them inspiring role models for so many. I'm sure it's been brilliant.
They inspire me. They are definitely what keeps me going.
Yeah, I love that. It's just we're gonna just a couple of little quick fire questions. So we've got last one. What one piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Anything is possible. I think that often we have dreams in our heads that we bury away and are in denial of. So if my advice would be, just anything is possible, and don't worry about how you're going to get there. Just have dreams. Surround yourself with pictures or things, visions of what the future holds without any time frame necessarily, and somehow or other you will, if you believe in those dreams, they will help you find the way for you to achieve them. And every day I just feel an incredibly lucky, fortunate person that it's amazing how easily doors become visible to you. But you first have to know what it is you want. But that doesn't have to be career. It could just be knowing that you want to make a difference in, I don't know, this world of climate change and sustainability, or it could be that you want to be an amazing mom. It doesn't actually really matter. It's just having a vision of what you really want and being focused on that, and making sure if you're in a place where it's not serving that you take action, because life's far too short.
Brilliant answer, thank you. We spoke a little bit offline just before we started, and we talked about Stephen Bartlett and Diver CEO. And as I mentioned, as one of the inspirations for me starting this, I've taken something from his podcast, which is our tradition now we've got on here, where my previous guest has asked a question, and this is what she left for you. So, do businesses have a part to play in tackling the climate and social injustices we are facing as a global society? And why?
Oh my goodness. She must have known my daughter's studying sustainability at uni. she might have had a word with her. My wonderful daughter, Saoirse, she's studying sustainability, and she lives and breathes sort of the importance that all of us need to recognise that even the small things that we do can make a big difference. And it's okay that they might be small things. And so I think that there's change, like things like B Corp that employers can look at, and I think for me that they hold definitely some relevance for organisations who have ambition to make a difference, because sustainability and climate change are two very important things that we as business leaders need to think about, because not everyone trusts governments and their advice. And if you look back at the sort of recent summit in Glasgow, it seemed to me that the governments seemed to be really struggling to come to agreements, whereas it seemed the businesses were more forward thinking about what should we actually do. And I personally believe that businesses have a greater responsibility than even the government for making sure we don't wait to be told what to do, that we start to take action now. And one of my great disappointments is that we haven't, as a society, invested more in green energy, because it's just so easy to see now with what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, sort of the impact on dependence on the sort of oils and gases that there are. This is crazy. It's why are we not further ahead with renewable energy and green energy? And living in Brighton, it's so wonderful to see every day when you go down to the beachfront the investments that have been made for wind power. I think every business needs to come together and support each other in what are the smaller or bigger things that we can do, but making sure that if there's anything that if you work in an area where what you do can innovate around climate change and working towards net zero, that's really important. But I think in the future, and maybe even now, that can become a competitive advantage as well. But I think it's hugely important for businesses to do.
I agree, I completely agree. Amazing. Thank you so much, Carlene. Listen, like I say, it was great to obviously meet you briefly when we done the photo shoot and got you involved. And I'm so excited to get you on today. So thanks so much there's so many takeaways there. The culture, if there's listeners out there listening and trying to get a better culture, I think you're flying the flag for what a good, strong company culture looks like. So,
and if you need to be inspired, I'd read Harvard. Subscribe to Harvard Business Review, because it has it's full of HR and marketing ideas, and it's got some incredible thought leaders in there. So I definitely get a lot of inspiration from that as well.
Brilliant. Listen, I can't wait to share this episode. It's been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's
awesome.
been fantastic. Thank
Lovely.
you.
And that is a wrap.